October nights on Highway 19 always had a strange kind of silence. The kind that pressed against your windows and made the world outside feel heavier. I had been driving for hours through the Appalachian backroads, the kind of routes that GPS signals forgot existed. My destination was my cousin's cabin outside of Boone, North Carolina. What should have been a 5-hour drive was stretching into 8. The fog had rolled in thick, swallowing the trees, the stars, everything. My wipers squeaked in slow, tired arcs. The world beyond my headlights was nothing but white mist and shadows. Then I saw them again, those same distant headlights in my rearview mirror. At first I thought it was just another car behind me, but after 20 minutes, they hadn't changed distance, they didn't fall back. They didn't get closer, they just stayed there. 2 perfect circles of pale yellow light, locked behind me like eyes. I remember glancing at the fuel gauge. A quarter tank. My phone screen was blank. No bars, no signal, just the tiny words, searching for network. I turned up the radio, but all I got was static. The longer I drove, the stranger it felt. Every turn of the wheel seemed to lead me deeper into nowhere. No signs, no gas stations, not even a mile marker, just trees and mist. The air inside the car felt heavier, like the atmosphere itself was watching me. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe the driver behind me was nervous too. Maybe they just didn't want to pass on a fog-covered road. But then, something changed. The lights behind me flickered once, twice, then vanished. I slowed down, staring into the mirror, heart thudding. Nothing but fog. The road stretched behind me like an empty ribbon. Then out of nowhere I saw them again. But this time they weren't behind me, they were ahead. It made no sense. I hadn't turned off anywhere. There were no side roads. No way for another car to appear in front of me. Yet there they were, 2 headlights facing me. Dead center in the road, unmoving. I slammed my brakes, tires skidding across the damp asphalt. The car screeched to a stop about 50 feet away from the lights. But as soon as I stopped, the headlights blinked out. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, my breath fogging up the inside of the glass. The silence was suffocating. I turned on my high beam, scanning the road ahead. Nothing, just fog and asphalt. Then something hit my rear bumper. It wasn't a crash, more like a jolt. Enough to rock the car forward. I spun around, expecting to see another vehicle, but there was nothing. No lights, no sound. Just the faint echo of tires rolling on wet pavement. Except I wasn't moving, the sound came again, closer. I threw the car in drive and hit the gas. The engine roared, the tires screamed, and I sped through the fog like it was water. Branches clawed the sides of my car. Every nerve in my body screamed for me to keep going. No matter what, after a few miles, the fog began to thin. I could see the outlines of trees, the dark smudge of the horizon. Then finally a sign, "Welcome to Clover Ridge." Population 128, I'd never heard of it. There was no town, just an old gas station sitting crooked under a flickering light. I pulled in fast, the gravel crunching beneath my tires. The pump was so old it still had the rotating number dials. The place looked abandoned, but I needed to stop when I stepped out. The cold air cut through me. I left the engine running and walked up to the door of the small convenience store. The glass was so dirty I could barely see through it. But there were shapes inside, figures standing still, like mannequins. I pushed the door open, and a small bell rang. The smell hit me immediately. Not like dust or fuel, but something old, metallic, and sweet. My voice came out thin and nervous. "Hello? Anyone here?" The figures didn't move. Then I realized why. They weren't mannequins. They were people, at least what was left of them. Their skin looked gray, dried like paper. Their eyes were sunken, mouths open as if frozen mid-breath. And they were all facing the same direction. The counter at the back, behind it stood a man at least. I thought it was a man. He was tall, dressed in a tattered brown jacket, his head tilted slightly. I could see his breath in the cold air, but something about it was wrong. His chest didn't move when he exhaled. I took a step back. The bell above the door rang again. Softly this time when I turned around. The headlights were back, right outside the window, pressed against the glass, glaring into the station. I could see the outline of a car now, a black, rusted vehicle with its hood dented in. Inside, two shadowy figures sat perfectly still. The man behind the counter smiled then. The motion cracked his skin, revealing something black underneath. "Been a long time since anyone stopped by," he rasped. I ran. I didn't think. I just bolted through the door, jumped into my car and floored it. Gravel sprayed behind me as I tore out of Clover Ridge. The headlights followed, no matter how fast I drove. They stayed right there, 10 feet behind. Blinding and relentless, I screamed, slamming the steering wheel, begging for daylight. Then suddenly, just as the first grey light of dawn broke through the trees, the headlights vanished again, this time for good. When I reached the main highway hours later, I pulled into a diner. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my coffee. The waitress asked if I was okay. I told her I'd gotten lost near Clover Ridge. Her face went white. She said that town had burned down in 1986. No one lived there anymore. No one had since the gas station explosion that killed everyone inside. I looked down at my car keys and saw soot marks on my hands, and in the distance, through the reflection of the diner's glass, I could have sworn I saw two faint headlights, waiting. It was mid-October 2019. My girlfriend and I were on our way back from a small fall festival in West Virginia. The road was called Hollow Creek Pass, a twisting mountain route that had been shut down for years because of rock slides but recently reopened. It was supposed to be a shortcut, saving nearly 40 minutes. That shortcut almost cost us our lives. The first few miles were fine. Trees flanked both sides, their leaves red and orange like burning paper. The sunset poured through the branches, making everything look gold and peaceful. We had music on, laughing, talking about carving pumpkins that weekend. Then, as the road started to climb, my radio signal died. No big deal, just static. But then the GPS dropped too. The signal icon spun endlessly, searching. Classic Appalachia, I joked, but my girlfriend didn't laugh. She was staring out the window, frowning. "What?" I asked. "Someone's walking out there," she whispered. I slowed down. The road was narrow, the edges crumbling into deep ravines. There were no streetlights, just our beams cutting through the growing dusk. And she was right. Someone was walking, a woman, maybe in her 20s, barefoot, wearing what looked like a nightgown. Her hair was long and matted, hanging in front of her face. "Maybe she needs help," my girlfriend said. But something about the way the woman moved made my skin crawl. She wasn't walking like someone lost or injured. She was swaying. Every few steps, her body seemed to twitch, like she was fighting against invisible strings. I slowed the car beside her and rolled the window down halfway. "Hey, are you okay? You need a ride somewhere?" She stopped. Slowly, she turned her head toward me. Her face was pale, too pale, her eyes almost white in the low light. But it was her mouth that made me slam the window shut. She was smiling too wide, stretching her lips until they tore at the corners. Then she spoke, voice low and shaky. "You should not be here." Before I could react, she lunged toward the car, her hands slapped against the window, her nails scraping hard enough to screech. My girlfriend screamed as I hit the gas, the tires spinning before catching and sending us flying down the road. When I glanced in the mirror, the woman was gone. We didn't talk for a few minutes. The silence was heavy. Then I saw something moving in the trees, a flash of white, keeping pace with us. I pushed the pedal harder, my heart pounding. But the movement didn't stop. "Is she following us?" my girlfriend gasped. I didn't answer. The road twisted sharply right. For a moment I lost sight of her. Then, from the passenger side, something slammed into the car so hard the whole vehicle jolted. The side mirror shattered. I barely kept control. When we rounded the next bend, I saw a small bridge up ahead. Wooden, narrow, with old iron rails. As we reached it, I noticed the air turn colder, like we had driven into a freezer, and then, standing in the middle of the bridge, was that same woman. Her hair blew across her face, but I could see her mouth open in a silent scream. I hit the brakes, tires squealing. She didn't move. My girlfriend shouted for me to back up, but before I could, the woman disappeared, just gone. One blink and the bridge was empty. I rolled forward cautiously. Halfway across, the car began to shake. The steering wheel trembled under my hands, the whole vehicle vibrating like we were driving over gravel. But the planks beneath us were smooth. "Get us off this bridge," my girlfriend whispered, clutching the dashboard. When we reached the other side, I pressed the gas hard and didn't stop until we hit an intersection and saw the glowing lights of a diner. We stumbled inside, pale and shaking. The man behind the counter looked up. "You two look like you seen a ghost," he said with a half smile. I managed to laugh nervously. "You could say that. We took Hollow Creek Pass. There was this woman." The man's face changed. The smile faded. He set the coffee pot down slowly. "You saw her?" My girlfriend and I exchanged a look. "Who?" she asked. He nodded toward the window. "That bridge you crossed. Locals call her the Widow of Hollow Creek, story goes. Her car went off the bridge one foggy night 20 years back. She was pinned inside while the fire spread. Folks say she tries to stop drivers from crossing, tries to warn them off, but sometimes..." He didn't finish the sentence. Outside, I glanced at the car. The passenger side door had deep scratches running down it. Long, finger-shaped scratches. We drove home in silence that night, never taking that road again. But sometimes, when the weather turns cold and fog crawls down the mountain, I dream of that bridge and the pale woman smiling through the mist. The night began with a scream that did not belong to any living thing. It was sharp, guttural, and carried through the fog like a blade slicing through wet air. The kind of sound that instantly tells your brain something's wrong, something not human is nearby. I was driving through the Blue Ridge stretch of the Appalachian Mountains that October. The weather was the kind of cold that feels alive, like it's breathing on the back of your neck. I had been on the road for almost 5 hours, heading to visit my brother, who worked as a park ranger in a small town called Boone Hollow. My GPS had died nearly an hour ago. The signal kept flashing, recalculating, until it eventually went black. My phone battery was down to 9%. The road ahead was wrapped in thick mist, the headlights cutting through just enough to show the glimmer of cracked asphalt and the skeletal silhouettes of trees pressing in on both sides. I told myself I was fine. I had done long drives before, but that scream, it made the air feel heavier. I slowed down, gripping the wheel tight. That's when I saw something in the fog. A figure standing dead center in the middle of the road. It looked like a man, tall, shoulders slumped, head tilted downward. I honked, but he didn't move. My heart started to pound as I rolled the car to a stop. For a moment I considered just driving around him, but curiosity has a cruel way of making you stay. I rolled the window down just a few inches and called out, "Hey, you all right out here?" The man's head twitched, not lifted, twitched, like it had been jerked by a string. Then, slowly, he started walking toward the car, step by step. I rolled the window back up and threw the car into reverse. My headlights caught his face for a split second, and my blood froze. His eyes were completely black. No pupils, no whites, just pits of darkness that seemed to swallow the light. His mouth hung open slightly, and his skin looked like wet paper. I slammed the gas. The tires screeched against the pavement as I reversed down the road. The man broke into a run, his limbs flailing unnaturally fast. His joints moved wrong, like his elbows bent backward. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw two more figures emerging from the tree line. They moved the same way, jerky, twitching, sprinting toward me. I whipped the wheel and turned down an unmarked dirt path to my right. Branches scraped against the sides of the car as I sped through the trees, my headlights bouncing wildly. I could hear them running behind me, their footsteps uneven, their breaths hissing. Then nothing, silence. The car's engine hummed softly. The forest swallowed all other sound. I stopped to catch my breath. Heart hammering in my chest, I looked behind me, no one. Nothing but the fog curling through the trees. That's when I noticed something. There were handprints on my rear window. Not one or two, dozens. Small, large, smudged like someone had been pressing against the glass while I was driving. I threw the car into drive and bolted forward. The dirt road twisted and turned until I finally saw a wooden sign ahead. Old Timber Trail Campground. There was an old cabin near the entrance, the light still faintly glowing inside. I pulled up, jumped out, and ran to the door. An old man answered. He looked startled, but not surprised. "Let me guess," he said. "You saw them." I was breathing hard. "Who? What the hell were those things?" He sighed and stepped aside, motioning me in. The cabin smelled of smoke and pine. "Locals call them the Hollow Men," he said. "Used to be miners long time ago. Got trapped in the mountain when it collapsed. When they dug them out, their bodies were wrong. Folks buried them deep, but the mountain doesn't like to stay quiet." He poured me a cup of coffee, his hands trembling slightly. "Every October, people who drive through the misted roads around here say they see them again, looking for a way back, looking for light." He looked me dead in the eye. "They hate headlights, but they love engines that stop." I swallowed hard, the coffee burning down my throat. "So what do I do?" He shrugged. "Keep driving. Never stop on these roads after midnight, and if you hear the screaming again..." He paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Whatever you do, do not look in your mirrors." I left before dawn. I did not sleep that night when I reached Boone Hollow. I told my brother what happened. He laughed it off until he saw my rear window. The prints were still there, faded but visible. Only thing was, when the frost formed the next morning, those handprints stayed warm. They didn't freeze over. That was 3 years ago. I sold the car soon after, but sometimes just before Halloween, I still get voicemails from unknown numbers. Static, then a sound in the background, that same scream, that same wet, unnatural sound that no human throat could ever make. If you ever find yourself driving through Appalachia this October, keep your lights on, keep your doors locked, and never stop for anyone in the fog. Because what looks like a lost traveler might just be something that never left those mountains, and if you hear that scream behind you, do not look back. There are roads in Appalachia that do not appear on any map. Locals say they move, that sometimes a path that was not there the day before will suddenly appear in the mist, paved, perfect, and strangely inviting. They call them the travelers' roads, but those who drive them never come back. I was 19 when I decided to test that legend. My friend Kyle and I were road tripping across the Blue Ridge region that October. We were both adrenaline junkies, the kind of people who thought danger was just another word for fun. We had heard stories about the Traveler's Road, and naturally, we wanted to see if it was real. It was late, maybe close to 2 a.m. when it happened. We were driving along Route 16, somewhere south of Richlands, when the GPS screen flickered. The map distorted, then reset when it came back. A new route had appeared. It wasn't labeled. just a thin grey line leading through a dense patch of forest. Kyle laughed. There it is, the road that doesn't exist. I grinned. Let's go see where it leads. The asphalt was smooth. Too smooth, no cracks, no potholes, no sign of wear. The fog thickened almost immediately, wrapping around us like cotton. The headlights barely reached 20 feet ahead. Then we saw the first sign. It was wooden, nailed crookedly into a post. Burned into the surface were the words, "You are welcome," Kyle snorted. Creepy, someone's idea of a prank, but the further we drove, the stranger it got. The trees looked wrong, their trunks unnaturally tall, their branches bending over the road like ribs closing around us. Every few minutes we'd pass another sign. No turning back. Almost there. Stay on the road. We started joking less. The silence inside the car became heavy. The air was too still, too cold. Even the crickets had stopped chirping. I checked the rearview mirror, but the road behind us was gone. Just endless fog, Kyle, I said quietly. I think we should turn around. He nodded, gripping the wheel tighter. But when he tried, the car jerked violently. The steering wheel locked. We couldn't turn. Then, through the mist, we saw headlights. Another car coming toward us. We slowed, relieved for a second. But something was wrong. The lights didn't bounce. They didn't move like headlights should, and then they lifted off the ground. I gasped. The lights weren't from a car. They were eyes. Two massive, glowing eyes, suspended in the fog. Kyle slammed the gas. Tires screaming as we tore down the road. The fog turned thicker, pressing against the windshield like a living thing. I looked out the window and saw shapes moving alongside us. Tall, thin figures running just beyond the tree line, keeping pace with the car. Their arms were too long, their faces stretched and hollow. One of them leaned close enough that its hand scraped the side mirror. Long black fingers leaving a smear like tar. Kyle, go faster, I screamed. We hit 90, then 100. The car rattled, the engine screaming in protest. Ahead, another sign appeared, half broken, swinging from a single nail. Keep driving. Then suddenly the road ended. We burst out of the fog and onto a gravel shoulder. The car fishtailed, spinning until we came to a stop. I jumped out, gasping, heart hammering. We were back on Route 16. The fog behind us lingered. Unmoving like a wall, I turned to Kyle. He was shaking, pale, staring straight ahead. Are you okay? I asked. He didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the rearview mirror. I leaned over to look and froze. There, standing in the middle of the road we had just come from, was one of those tall figures, just watching us. Its head tilted slowly to the side, and even through the fog I could see its mouth open, but no sound came out. Then it lifted its arm and waved. Not a friendly wave, more like a goodbye. We drove away and never spoke of it again. But something about Kyle changed. He became distant, quiet. A week later, he went missing. They found his car on a back road in North Carolina. Engine running, headlights on. The strange part was, the tires were spotless. No dirt, no dust, and the GPS. It showed a single route, the same grey line leading nowhere. Locals who saw the car said they found something else. Two on the windshield, faint but visible when the light hit it just right, were words traced in condensation, "You are welcome." That's the thing about Appalachia. It remembers every traveler who passes through, especially those who take the wrong road. So if you're ever driving through the mountains at night and your GPS glitches, if a new road appears, if the signs start whispering in your headlights, do not take it. There is a certain kind of silence that only happens in the middle of nowhere. A silence so deep that even your heartbeat feels too loud. That was the silence I drove into that night. It was October 23rd, and I was heading to visit my sister in Western Virginia. The sun had just gone down. painting the sky with bruised purple streaks that melted into black. I took an old detour road I found on my map, a shortcut that sliced straight through the mountains. It was supposed to save me an hour. Instead, it nearly cost me everything. The first sign that something was wrong came when my radio started picking up static. Not just ordinary static, this was different. Beneath the crackling, I could swear I heard faint voices. Whispers. I turned the dial, trying to tune it out. But the whispers stayed. The voice of a woman came through, soft and shaking, saying, "Do not stop. Please, do not stop." Then the signal went dead. My stomach tightened. I laughed nervously to myself, chalking it up to bad reception. But the air in the car felt heavier, colder. The road stretched endlessly ahead, surrounded by thick woods on both sides. There were no other cars. After 20 minutes of driving, I saw something that made me hit the brakes. On the right side of the road stood a small wooden cross, the kind you see marking the spot of an accident, but this one looked fresh. The ground beneath it was disturbed, and flowers lay neatly arranged, not wilted. As I slowed, my headlights caught something behind it, a figure standing just beyond the tree line. A woman. She was barefoot, wearing a pale dress that looked soaked through, as if she had been walking in the rain for hours. Her head was tilted down, her long black hair hanging in her face. I stopped the car without thinking. My first instinct was to help. "Hey, are you okay?" I shouted through the open window. She didn't answer. Instead, she started walking slowly toward the road. Every step seemed deliberate, almost painful. I turned on my hazard lights, stepped out of the car, and called out again, "Ma'am, do you need help?" When she stepped under the headlights, my breath caught in my throat. Her skin was pale gray, her eyes were open, but glassy, unfocused. There were scratches along her arms, and a dark line around her neck like bruising. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came out, just a low sound, like the faintest wheeze of air struggling to escape. Then the voice from the radio whispered again, "Do not stop." I froze. I turned toward the car. The radio was still off when I looked back. The woman was closer, much closer. Her feet weren't making any sound against the pavement. Her arms lifted slightly, trembling. That's when I noticed her shadow was wrong. It stretched the wrong direction. I jumped back into the car, slammed the door, and threw it into drive. As the tires screeched, she lunged forward, slamming both hands against my windshield, her face pressed against the glass, eyes empty, mouth wide open in a silent scream. I floored it. The car jerked forward, throwing her off. For a moment, I saw her roll into the ditch, limbs bending awkwardly. Before she vanished into the darkness, I didn't stop driving for almost an hour. Finally, I saw headlights, another car up ahead. Relief flooded through me, but when I caught up, I realized it wasn't moving. It was parked on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking, and in front of it, another wooden cross. I slowed down just long enough to see what was written on the small plaque nailed to it. "In loving memory of Sarah M., 1989-2012. I stared at the name. My blood ran cold because that was my sister's name. And 1989-2012, that was her birthday. And the year she died, I froze, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. It had been 10 years since she died in a car accident, on a road just like this. She had been driving home one night when she swerved to avoid hitting something. A woman standing in the middle of the road, the same story the police told me. The same woman they said was never found. I gunned the gas pedal again, desperate to get out of there. The trees blurred by, the mist closing in behind me, but as I sped forward, something began to form in the fog ahead, a shape, a figure standing in the center of the road. I recognized the dress, the dark hair, the pale face, but this time she was smiling, and right before I hit her, she disappeared. The car skidded, spun out, and slammed to a stop on the side of the road. My chest heaved, heart hammering so loud I thought it might break through my ribs. When I looked up, she was gone. Only the mist remained. I stayed there for a long time before finally turning the car back on. I drove until I reached the main highway again, never daring to look back. The next morning, when I told my sister's husband what happened, he didn't laugh. He didn't even look surprised. Instead, he went to a drawer, pulled out an old folded map, and pointed to a narrow road marked in pencil. "That's the one," he said quietly. "That's where she died." My hands shook as I recognized the same turn, the same intersection, the same curve I had driven on last night, the same cross, and at the bottom of the map, in his handwriting, there was one more note. "If you ever drive that way again, don't stop for anyone." I never did, but sometimes, when I drive at night and the fog rolls in, I still hear that same faint whisper through the static, "Do not stop." And every single time I listen, some roads are dangerous because of curves or fog. Others are dangerous because of what waits on them. I did not believe in curses or hauntings, not until I drove through the Devil's Backbone one October night. It's a stretch of old mountain road in Tennessee that locals refuse to take after dark. They say the road bends around the mountain like a spine, and if you listen close, you can hear bones cracking in the wind. I thought it was just backwoods folklore, until I became part of its story. It started as a simple delivery run. I work part-time for a small medical supply company that delivers to remote clinics. That night, my last stop was near the border of Tennessee and North Carolina. It was already close to midnight when my GPS rerouted me because of road construction. The detour, a narrow, twisting two-lane called Backbone Ridge Road. The locals had scratched out the road sign, spray-painted with the words, "Turn back." I laughed. Big mistake as I started driving. The trees closed in so tightly that my high beams only lit the road a few feet ahead. Every turn felt sharper than the last. My hands gripped the wheel, my knuckles pale under the flickering dashboard glow. After 10 minutes, I noticed something odd. My GPS signal dropped completely. Then the temperature inside the car fell. The digital thermometer on the dash read 41 degrees outside. It was supposed to be 60. I turned up the heat, nothing. The vents blew ice-cold air. A low fog began to creep up from the road, hugging the ground and thickening by the second. My headlights reflected off it like smoke. That's when I saw it. The figure standing in the fog ahead, just beyond the bend. At first I thought it was a deer. I slowed down, leaning forward. But as the fog parted, I saw the shape was too tall, too still. A man stood there. He was facing me, his head tilted slightly to one side, wearing what looked like old work clothes, overalls, boots, and a torn flannel shirt. His arms hung limply at his sides. The oddest part, his skin looked wrong, grayish, cracked like dried clay. I rolled to a stop about 30 feet away. He didn't move. I honked my horn. The sound echoed strangely, not out, but back, like the mountain itself swallowed it. Still, the man didn't react. Then, with a single twitch, his head jerked upright. I saw his face clearly in the headlights. Deep, hollow eyes, a jaw hanging slightly open, lips dark like bruises. He took one step forward, then another, moving in an uneven rhythm, like his bones were grinding inside his body. I threw the car in reverse. The man started walking faster. Then he broke into a sprint. I hit the gas and tore backward down the narrow road. My heart slammed against my ribs as I struggled not to slide off the edge. The headlights caught glimpses of his figure chasing after me, not running like a person, but twitching and jerking forward in bursts, his limbs snapping into unnatural angles with each stride. At one point, he dropped onto all fours, scuttling like some broken animal. I screamed and floored it. The car bounced violently. The tires screeching on gravel, my rearview mirror showed flashes of movement in the fog. A shape crawling, keeping up, and then nothing, gone. Just the hiss of fog against the windshield. I didn't stop. I kept driving until I saw the faint outline of a gas station up ahead, its flickering lights glowing through the mist. I pulled in, shaking. The old man behind the counter stared as I stumbled inside. Pale and shaking. "You came from the ridge?" he asked quietly. I nodded, still trying to catch my breath. He sighed, taking off his cap. "Boy, you shouldn't have done that, not this time of year." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He leaned in, lowering his voice. "October brings 'em out. The ones that didn't make it off that road." My skin prickled. He pointed out the window toward the fog-covered ridge. "They say it's cursed. Back when the road was built, 3 men died clearing dynamite charges on that mountain. Blown apart. They never found all the pieces." I swallowed hard. "They were buried right there along the backbone. Some nights," he continued, "they still try to walk their way home, but they don't remember how their bones fit together anymore." A chill ran through me. "You're saying that was one of them?" The man didn't answer. He just muttered something under his breath. A short prayer maybe, and handed me a steaming cup of coffee. "Don't drive that way again, son. Some roads don't want to let go." I stayed there until dawn. When the fog finally lifted, I looked out toward the mountain. The road was visible again, curling like a black snake through the trees, but halfway up, I could see something glinting in the sunlight. 3 metal markers driven into the rock, each one marked with a single letter. JML, the initials of the men who died. Before I left, I took one last look at my car. The back bumper was covered in mud, thick grayish mud, with 3 distinct handprints pressed into it. And every October since, when the temperature drops and the fog rolls in, my radio starts to crackle again. Sometimes, in between the static, I hear 3 sharp knocks, one for each man, and every time I whisper back, "I am not stopping. Not tonight, because I know what happens if you do." They say if you drive through the Appalachian backroads long enough, you start to feel like you are being watched. For me, that feeling became real one night near a forgotten stretch of highway outside Boone, North Carolina, a place the locals call Widow's Curve. They say it got its name from the wrecks over the past 60 years. At least 24 cars have gone off the bend and down the ravine below. Every single driver was alone, and none of them were ever found with their seatbelts buckled. No one really knows why, but I think I do. It was mid-October. The air sharp and full of the smell of wet leaves. I was driving from Tennessee to Virginia for work, my GPS suggesting Widow's Curve as a shortcut. I didn't realize what road I was on until I saw the faded sign. Sharp turn. Reduce speed. It was already too late to turn back. The fog was thick enough to swallow the high beams. I slowed to 30, gripping the wheel tighter. The road twisted around the ridge and my headlights caught something. A white shape flickering through the mist. A woman. She stood at the bend, her dress long and old-fashioned, like something from the 1930s. Her hair was dark and dripping wet, her bare feet pale against the asphalt. She was waving one arm, slow and desperate. My heart jumped into my throat. I pulled over and rolled the window down. "Ma'am, are you all right?" She didn't answer, just stood there, head tilted, staring at me through the fog. Then she spoke, barely a whisper. "Help me, please." Every instinct screamed to stay inside the car, but I couldn't just drive off. I grabbed my flashlight, stepped out and walked toward her. The air was colder outside. Unnaturally so, the fog felt heavy, like breathing through water. My shoes squelched in the wet leaves as I moved closer. "Are you hurt?" I asked. She pointed toward the edge of the road, the drop-off where the guardrail had been twisted and broken. I followed her gesture and shined the flashlight down. The beam fell onto the wreckage of a rusted-out car lying halfway down the slope. Ivy had grown through the windows and the metal was eaten away with rust. It looked like it had been there for decades. When I turned back to ask her another question, she was gone. The fog had swallowed her whole. I spun in a circle, my chest tightening. Then I heard it. A soft tapping against the driver's side window of my car. I froze. The woman was standing there again. Only now she was closer, too close. Her face was pressed against the glass, her eyes hollow and black. Her lips moved, but I couldn't hear the words. I sprinted back to the car, yanked the door open and slammed it shut. She was still there, staring in, expression blank. Her hand slid slowly down the glass, leaving a wet streak behind. Then she turned and began walking toward the edge again. I should have driven away. I should have. But something inside me, curiosity, guilt, I don't know, made me roll down the window just an inch. The sound that came next was not human. A shriek, high and broken, ripped through the fog. I hit the gas. Tires spinning on the slick pavement as I tore around the bend. The car fishtailed, and for a moment, I thought I was going over. But somehow the tires caught grip. When I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw her standing in the middle of the road. Still watching, her face was different now. Twisted with rage, her mouth gaping too wide. Stretching across her face until it wasn't a face anymore. Then she vanished. I didn't stop again until I reached a diner 20 miles down the road. I was still shaking when the waitress came over with coffee. "You okay, hun?" she asked. I told her what I saw. Her face went pale. "You went through Widow's Curve, didn't you?" I nodded slowly. She sighed. "That's her. Been there since the 50s. Car went off the cliff one rainy night. Newlyweds, they say he jumped out before the crash. She didn't make it." My stomach turned. "And people still see her?" "Every October," she said. "She waves them down. Just like she waved him, always asks for help. Always points to the wreck, but no one who steps out ever stays the same." I tried to laugh it off, but the sound died in my throat. When I left the diner an hour later, my car was cold again. I climbed in, started the engine, and froze. On the passenger seat lay something wet and heavy. A single white glove, old-fashioned, mud-stained, and on the inside of the windshield, written in the condensation, were 5 words: "You should have stayed." My throat went dry. I threw the glove out the window and floored it. But here's the thing. When I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw it again, that same woman, standing in the middle of the road, her hand raised, waving me on. I swear I can still hear her voice sometimes. When the fog rolls in and the road gets quiet, and my headlights flicker just right, it's soft, sad, and angry. She whispers the same thing every time. "You left me behind," and I never know if she's talking to the man who jumped, or to me, because the next morning when I checked my car again, that glove was back on the seat, still wet, still waiting. They say Widow's Curve has taken over 30 drivers now, and maybe she's still looking for the one that got away. So if you ever see a woman on the side of the road, waving you down through the fog, do not stop, even if she cries for help, even if she looks lost, even if you think she's real, because maybe she once was. If you ever find yourself driving through the Appalachian back roads past midnight, and your gas runs low, never stop near an unmarked mile marker. That is what they told me, and I wish I had listened. It was the second week of October. The mountains were drowning in mist. The trees leaned close to the road as if whispering secrets. I was driving my old Jeep through West Virginia, trying to reach Charleston before sunrise. I had been on the road for hours. No signal, no other cars, just fog, rain, and that uneasy stillness that feels heavier than silence. Then I saw him, a man standing by the edge of the road, No flashlight, no car, just standing perfectly still under the falling rain. He wore a dark coat, long, heavy, soaked through. His face was turned toward the ground. I slowed down, rolled the window halfway. "Hey, you all right?" I shouted. He didn't move, didn't flinch for a second. I thought maybe he was hurt or drunk. Then my headlights caught something strange. The number 43 painted in white on the guardrail right beside him. But there was no official mile marker sign anywhere. Something about that number stuck with me. I called out again. Nothing. The rain picked up, hammering against the hood. I decided to pull over and check on him. The moment I stepped out, I knew it was a mistake. The smell hit me first, like wet copper and dirt, the kind of scent that sticks to your skin. My flashlight beam shook as I pointed it at him. "Sir, do you need help?" He slowly lifted his head. His skin was as pale as wax. His eyes cloudy, unfocused, like he had not blinked in years. He stared at me for a few long seconds before speaking. "You should keep driving," he said softly. "He does not like when people stop." A chill went straight through me. "Who?" I asked. The man tilted his head. "The one who walks the curve." Before I could respond, he pointed behind me, toward the bend I had just come from. I turned to look. The fog was thick, shifting. For a split second I saw what looked like a tall, dark silhouette standing in the middle of the road. But when I blinked, it was gone when I turned back. The man was gone too, just gone. I ran back to the Jeep, slammed the door and locked it. My heart was pounding so loud it drowned out the rain. I threw the car in drive and hit the gas. For about 5 minutes I told myself I imagined it. That exhaustion was making me hallucinate. But then the dashboard flickered. The radio came alive with static. And through that static I heard a voice. "Turn around," I froze. The voice came again. Low, distorted, impossible to place. "Turn around." I shut the radio off. But the sound didn't stop. It was coming from outside. Something brushed the back of the Jeep. A scraping sound. Metal on metal. I looked in the mirror. There he was. The same man from before. Running alongside my car in the rain. Only this time his face was twisted. His mouth stretched open far too wide. Teeth gleaming in the headlights. He should not have been able to keep up. I was doing 50, maybe 60, but he did, and then he vanished again. I floored the gas, tears burning my eyes, and sped for miles without looking back. By the time I reached a gas station, the rain had stopped. The fog had lifted. I stumbled inside, drenched, shaking. The clerk behind the counter stared at me. "You all right, buddy?" I told him what happened. He went pale. "You said you saw him by mile 43? He asked quietly. "Yeah," I said. Breathless, he swallowed. "No one stops there anymore. That's where the crash happened back in 82. Driver fell asleep. His car flipped 3 times before it caught fire. They only ever found him, burned so bad. They could not tell if he was still standing or crawling when they found him." I felt my stomach drop. "You're saying that was him?" The clerk nodded slowly. "Locals say he warns people, not out of kindness, but because he doesn't want to be alone. He tries to make them stop. Tries to make them look behind them. Once you do, you never leave that road the same." I tried to laugh it off, but my throat felt tight. "Well, I did look behind me." The clerk frowned. "Then you'd better not drive tonight. The ones who look back, they usually don't make it past the next curve." I slept in my car that night with the lights on, too afraid to drive. When the sun came up, I checked the back of my Jeep. There were streaks all over the paint, long, thin scratches that hadn't been there before, and right above the bumper, someone had written 3 words in the grime. "You looked back." My knees went weak. I wiped it off immediately, started the engine, and drove straight out of West Virginia, swearing I would never take a mountain road again. That night I stayed at a motel just outside Roanoke. I double-checked the locks, shut the curtains tight, and tried to convince myself it was all just a bad dream. But when I woke up at 3 a.m., I heard something tapping against the window. Tap, 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 I froze, pulled the curtain just enough to see, and standing right outside, in the dark, was a man. Soaked, silent, staring right at me. His lips moved slowly and even through the glass. I could make out what he was saying. "You should have kept driving." When I looked again, he was gone. The next morning I packed up and left. I told myself I would forget it, that it was over, but the truth is, I see that number everywhere now. 43, on receipts, license plates, gas totals, and sometimes, when I drive at night and the fog rolls in, I still catch a glimpse of him, standing by the road, face hidden, pointing toward the curve, the one he never left. So if you ever find yourself driving through the mountains in October, and you see a man standing still by the road near an unmarked marker, do not stop, do not roll down your window, do not ask if he is okay, because the moment you look into his eyes, he knows your road now too. If you are ever driving through the Appalachians and the only gas station open is surrounded by woods that seem to breathe, do not stop there after midnight. That is what my brother told me when he handed me the keys to his truck. But I laughed it off. I had driven these roads 100 times before. I thought I knew every curve, every hollow, every sound of wind through the trees. Until that night, it was October 29th. 2 days before Halloween, the fog hung low, curling around the headlights. I'd been driving for hours from Knoxville toward Bluefield, half asleep, the hum of the tires hypnotic. Then the low fuel light blinked on. I cursed under my breath and checked the GPS. No signal, no towns nearby. Just one faint gray line marking the road I was on. Hollow Creek Road. 15 minutes later, I saw the flicker of fluorescent light ahead. A small gas station stood at the edge of the woods, the kind that looked frozen in time. No brand, just a faded sign that said service. Half lit, half dead. I pulled in. Only one pump. No cars, no movement, but the lights were on, so I figured someone had to be inside. I stepped out. The air was thick, heavy, like it was pressing against me somewhere in the distance. I heard an owl and something else, a long, dragging sound, almost like footsteps through wet leaves. "Hello?" I called out. The sound stopped. I brushed it off and started pumping gas. The old nozzle rattled like it hadn't been used in years. My reflection in the glass door of the convenience store looked distorted, stretched almost wrong. Then I saw movement inside. A man behind the counter staring straight at me. I waved. He didn't wave back. After I filled up, I went in to pay. The door creaked open, the bell above it letting out a weak, broken chime. The air smelled like dust and oil. The man behind the counter didn't move as I entered. He was tall, maybe in his 60s, with gray hair and deep lines across his face. His eyes were pale, too pale. "Pump one," I said. Forcing a smile, he nodded slowly, but his expression never changed. He just stared at me like he was trying to remember something. "You are out late," he said finally. "Yeah," I chuckled nervously. "Long drive." "Just needed some gas." He kept staring. "You came down Hollow Creek?" I hesitated. "Yeah, why?" He blinked slowly. "No one drives Hollow Creek this time of year." I frowned. "Why not?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked past me, toward the window. His eyes went wide, then narrow again, like he was seeing something he did not want to acknowledge. "You should leave," he said softly. "Before they smell you," I froze. "Before who smells me?" He turned back to me and smiled, but it was not the kind of smile that came from kindness. "You'll see." Then he walked into the back room and shut the door. The sound of the latch locking echoed in the silence. I stood there for a moment, unsure if I should laugh or run. But then I noticed something on the counter, a Polaroid picture under a dusty glass paperweight. In the picture were 3 men standing in front of the same gas station, but something about them made my stomach twist. Their faces were blurred, not like motion blur, like someone had wiped them away before the picture developed. I put the picture down and turned to leave, but the bell above the door did not chime when I pushed it open. It was stuck, and outside, the fog was thicker now. The woods seemed closer. Then came the knocking, not from the door, from under the floorboards. 3 slow knocks, then silence. I froze, every hair on my body standing. The sound came again, louder this time. Closer to where I stood, I stumbled back, scanning the floor. When the lights flickered for a split second, the glass fridge doors reflected something behind me. Someone standing by the counter, but when I turned, no one was there. The back door, the one the old man had gone through, was wide open. A cold wind blew through, carrying the faint smell of rot and earth. I ran outside. My truck was still there, engine idling, lights cutting through the fog. I jumped in and slammed the door shut. But before I could shift into drive, something moved in the mist ahead. A figure stepped out, tall, thin, and moving wrong. Its arms hung too long, its head tilted to one side. It wasn't the old man. I hit the horn, nothing. The figure didn't flinch. It just started walking toward me. Each step was slow, deliberate. I could hear it even over the engine, the crunch of gravel under bare feet. I pressed the gas, but the truck didn't move. It was like something was holding it down. Then I heard the whisper, "Stay." It came from inside the truck. From the seat behind me, I turned slowly. There was nothing there. When I looked forward again, the figure was right at the hood. Face pressed against the glass. Its skin was gray, stretched thin like wet paper. Its eyes were hollow pits, and it smiled, that same awful, knowing smile the old man had given me. The lights flickered again, then went black. When they came back, I was sitting on the road a mile away, engine off, doors locked, gas tank full. The clock on the dashboard said 3:33 a.m. I do not remember driving. I do not remember leaving, but when I checked my phone, there was one new photo in my camera roll, a Polaroid image. 3 blurred figures standing in front of that same gas station, and this time, one of them was me. If you ever pick up a hitchhiker in the Appalachians on a foggy October night, make sure they cast a shadow. I was driving home from a friend's wedding in Asheville. Sometime after midnight, the after-party had gone longer than expected, and I was too cheap to book a motel. The plan was simple: 6 hours on the road, coffee in hand, and I would be back home before sunrise. The first few hours were fine, quiet highways, the soft hum of tires, the static hum of some late-night radio preacher fading in and out of the signal. But once I passed the sign for Boone County, the fog began to crawl down from the mountains. It was like the whole world was swallowed. The road disappeared 10 feet ahead. The trees bent in, silhouettes swaying like watchers. And then I saw her, a woman on the side of the road, her white coat glowing faintly in the high beams. She had her thumb out, her other arm wrapped tight around her chest. For a second I thought it was a trick of the fog, a ghost image made by tired eyes. But when I slowed down, she turned her face toward me, and I swear I saw tears streaked with mud. Something in me, maybe guilt, maybe instinct, made me stop. I rolled down the window. "You okay, ma'am?" She nodded slowly, her voice shaking. "Car broke down. Been walking for hours. Please, I just need a ride to town." Her breath came out in puffs of mist. She looked human, cold, helpless, so I unlocked the door. "Hop in." She slid into the passenger seat, shivering violently. "Thank you," she whispered. "No one stopped for me all night." Her clothes were damp, streaked with dirt. Her hair clung to her cheeks. But when I looked at her hands gripping her knees, I noticed something strange. Her fingers were red, raw, almost bloodied, like she had been clawing at something. "You sure you're okay?" I asked. She nodded again. I'm fine. Just cold. We drove in silence for a while. The fog pressed closer to the glass, the beams of light turning the road into a narrow tunnel. My dashboard clock read 1:22 Ma'am, then she spoke. Do you believe in spirits? Her tone was soft, almost casual. I chuckled nervously. Not really, I've heard stories, but I'm more of a see it to believe it kind of guy. She turned her head toward me, her face half lit by the dashboard glow. You shouldn't joke about things that still walk these roads. The way she said it made my stomach twist. Excuse me? She looked forward again, her voice lower. They do not like being laughed at, especially when the fog's this thick. That is when they travel. Her words hung in the air. I laughed softly, trying to shake it off. Okay, well, thanks for the warning. But then she asked, how long have you been driving? Maybe 4 hours? I said. She tilted her head. And you have not looked behind you once? My throat tightened. What? Check your mirror, she whispered. I did, and for a moment, I swear on my life, I saw another shape in the back seat. A dark figure, head bent low, breathing slow and deep. I whipped around. Nothing, empty. When I turned back, the woman was smiling. Not kindly, not warmly, her lips stretched too wide, teeth too small and sharp. I jerked the wheel slightly, heart pounding. What the hell is this? She just stared, smile fading into something colder. You should not have stopped. The fog outside grew denser. My headlights caught something hanging from the trees, pieces of cloth, ribbons maybe. They fluttered as we passed, marking the road like silent warnings. I looked at her again, but her seat was empty. I slammed the brakes, the car screeched. Tires skidding on the wet road. I turned on the hazard lights and looked around. She was gone, door still closed. No footprints outside, and then from the back seat came a sound, breathing slow, rattling wet. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me not to look, but my body disobeyed. I turned my head inch by inch, and there she was in the back seat. Her head tilted backward, hair floating like it was underwater. Her mouth wide open, but no sound came out. Only that horrible wet breath. I slammed the gas and sped forward, heart racing, barely staying on the road. The radio flickered on by itself, static, then whispers. The same preacher's voice from earlier, but distorted. They follow the kind who stop for them. The woman's face moved closer, like she was stretching forward without moving her body. Her eyes were empty black pits now. Take me home, she hissed. I do not know where you live. I screamed. She pointed forward, a pale hand shaking. You already passed it. And just like that, the headlights caught a small wooden sign. Hollow Creek Cemetery. The gates were wide open. I drove past it, fast, refusing to stop, refusing to look again, but she started screaming. It was not a human scream. It was 1,000 voices crying out through one mouth. The car shook. The windshield cracked down the middle. Then suddenly silence when I looked back again. The seat was empty, no fog, no sound. I drove until sunrise, not daring to stop. When I finally pulled into a diner to calm down, I noticed something on the passenger seat, a small silver locket. Inside, it was a faded photo of a woman in a white coat. The date scratched into the metal read October 29th, 1978. She had died on that same road, and when I checked the rear-view mirror before leaving the diner, I saw her sitting there again, quiet, smiling, waiting for the next driver to stop. If you made it this far, you are braver than most. These October road trip encounters remind us horror is not always hiding in old houses or deep woods. Sometimes it is waiting on the open road. If you felt the chill tonight, do not forget to like this video, subscribe to Fear Begins, and share your own creepy encounter in the comments. We may feature your story next.